wonderful podcast listener, wow.
Well, I don't like it.
The laughing woman can only mean one thing. That it's time. It's a bit unnerving.
Yeah.
That it's time yet again for another one of our Heidi and Henry podcasts.
Henry and Heidi.
You are number one first in my world, Heidi May.
You're number one.
You better believe it. Heidi's the best. We've been battling all morning.
Sure have.
So,
I was hungry.
Heidi May.
We took a trip around all of Los Angeles.
Heidi May comes roaring into the office, a whooping and a whomping, and she's always hungry. And today, she went for the most side door I want breakfast pitch.
I did not.
You so
I did
side
not.
door.
Nope.
We're going to get the mail. And I said, so she starts with like, I brought my own food, so don't worry, we don't have to go anywhere.
Exactly.
Implication of like, I brought my sadness meal.
Not at all.
It's cold, and I'll have to microwave it. So we're driving towards the mailbox, and she said, "What did you say?" I like, you better tell me where you want to go eat.
No,
I'm not playing your game.
Yeah, no, because that's not what happened.
I'm not playing your game.
Because that's not what happened. You said, "Where are we going?" in that tone, just like that.
Yep.
Where are we going?
Where
and
we
I said, you
going?
know what? We're not going anywhere. I brought my lunch. I know you don't like to go every day. It's cool. I brought my lunch. Let's just go get the mail.
And then you said?
And go back to the office. And I said, I'm not playing your game.
Yeah, my game.
Yeah.
I have a game.
Yeah.
Okay. But here's the thing, though, and you have to admit the truth of this. We got the mail, and I said, so where are we going? And you went, I'm really hungry.
Yeah. Well, that's the truth.
And so I said, well, what about this place that you say you don't like? Well, you still didn't like it. And then you didn't want to go to the place that we went to yesterday. And so I said, okay, we're going to go down to a place we haven't been for
a month.
Easy. And so we go around the block, right, to get parking?
Well, we drove by and I'm like, it's closed.
Right.
They've gone out of business.
So we're at the intersection and we look to our left and it's closed. Like paper on the windows with this sign. We're like, how'd you do that? I mean, the place is really good. And there's people
and
go in
busy.
there. Yeah. And so, okay. So we'll go to the other place that's like around the corner. So
Doughboys.
We go around the corner to Doughboys. We park. I put in a bunch of quarters.
We walk all the way down the street in the sun.
Yeah, poor Heidi hates the sun.
I do.
She hates the sun's guts.
I do.
And we get up to Doughboys, and Doughboys is
out of business.
It's out of business. And for those of you who haven't eaten at Doughboys, really wonderful people run that place.
Yeah.
The food was so good. Really good chow. Super nice people.
I don't know what happened.
And who knows what happened. Good coffee. Good everything.
So then I was even hungrier.
And then so now Heidi, she's getting all feisty. She's all mad.
Well, I'm not mad, but I'm at least a song came on the radio that I was enjoying, and God forbid I turn it up because
God forbid
Henry
tiny
has
speakers.
A complete meltdown.
Henry has loud music in his face with ruined ears, and he goes, "Can we just turn it down?" Like, no, we need to turn it. So like Heidi just turns it up so loud, I nearly shot through the roof of the car. And
yelled at me.
I
yes,
went like,
you did.
Ow, that's so loud.
You kept trying to turn off the radio, and you were like hitting it, and it kept turning back on, which made me want to laugh.
It was funny. So then we drove and finally got some food. And so now we're both fed.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah.
Yay.
Podcast
I'm not
time.
going to play your game.
Yeah, because you were doing that thing.
That thing,
Like, I'll do this for Heidi.
Oh.
Make it all about Heidi. When really you want to go eat just as much as I do.
got food. I can microwave anything.
So do I.
I got some roadkill. I'm fine.
Yeah, and then something else happened, but I forget what it was.
Wow.
So many things happen. We should put GoPros in the car. That's a TV show.
Yeah, there it is.
Because that's where it always goes down.
That's where it's going down.
I don't know why. What it is about the car. Yeah, and you shut me down when we were going over Laurel Canyon because I wanted to listen to Sly and the Family Stone, and you shut me down on that.
I turned it down and shut you down.
You
The
did.
song ended.
No, it didn't. You were like,
You should
I
hear
just wanna be
Heidi
able
the
to hear
DJ.
it.
Heidi the DJ. She goes like she'll say, I'm gonna. What did you say today? I'm the DJ, and I'm gonna make everything better. But sometimes when she's fired up, she'll go like, I am the DJ.
yeah.
And she'll listen to 4 seconds of 50 songs.
Yes. Then you get it all in.
She'll like, no,
You suck.
hideous, no,
Terrible.
that's terrible, no, that gives me cramps.
Why did they? Yes, cramps.
There's a bunch of bands that give her cramps. There's a bunch of she is so against
Yeah,
a lot of music.
it's true.
And there's like 5 bands and 5 songs.
No, that's not
it.
true. No, there's a lot more than that I love. But when I love them, I love them.
What do you want to talk about, old buddy?
I thought we would talk about your first rock concert.
Okay, let's see. I can remember what it is. All right, well, here's something that might be interesting. A long time ago, when I was really, really young, I was mildly a record store guy. Like, I'd go to the record store, but only triggered by what was on the radio. Like new Rolling Stones album, Go Get It, Steve Miller, Aerosmith, whatever was on the FM, and I liked it. I'd go put down my $4.99 at Kemp Mill or Record and Tape Limited, wherever, and get the record. But I was not like going into the record store to be taught what is happening. I wouldn't hang out and go, what's that? I would just react to like a single on the radio. And going to see a concert was kind of a distant idea for me. For me, it was about listening to the radio and every once in a while buying a record, but not all the time. Like a few times a year. It wasn't a lack of interest. It was just I didn't have this idea of like, go to the record store, get records. I just kept the radio on. And so the idea of going to a concert, I just didn't, no one I knew was going to them. The arena for us in Washington, the local arena was the Capitol Center. It's gone now, in Largo, Maryland, which is, if you don't have a car, it might as well be halfway across the world because you just don't have wheels to get out there. It'd be impossible on a bus. And so it was never really in my realm of thinking. And I think it was Ian MacKaye who proposed the idea that we go to see a concert. And I believe the first one we ever saw, I think I was 16 years old. And we got tickets to see Aerosmith when Walk This Way was the single. I think that's the Toys in the Attic tour, right? Not Rocks, Toys in the Attic. And that was the big single. And I had Rocks and Toys in the Attic. Those are great records. I played them. I still listen to them. They're perfect. I played them all the time. And so we didn't even know how to get tickets. You know, you get that Ticketmaster envelope and suddenly you have a ticket. But it was like, how do you do that? And I don't even know if we had the ride wired. We just got the tickets and went, okay, now what do we do?
So how'd you guys get there?
If I'm remembering correctly, we got a ride from a buddy of mine in my high school who had a car. And he lived in the suburbs, but he came into DC and he picked Ian and I up. And we went out, and I might have this wrong, but I think it was REO Speedwagon opening. And then Aerosmith at the Capitol Center in Largo, 1977, around there.
Do you remember were you excited? Or just...
I had the same feeling, and I remember this distinctly. I had the same feeling I did when I would go very occasionally with my dad to see the Redskins. He had tickets, and every once in a while his wife didn't want to go, so he'd call me, hey, you want to go see the Redskins? Yeah. It was amazing. You'd go in this big place, all this noise and all the colors and all this movement in front of you was like kind of dazzled you when you'd walk in because it was so enormous. The thing I'm trying to get across is the enormity of it and how small I felt and not really a part of it, where you're nowhere near being a participant. you're just kind of looking at it from like 2 city blocks away. Like there's the guys on the field, they're this big. And so we get in via this ride, we get to the Capitol Center, and it's a parking lot like the size of a city, because it holds like, what, 18, 20,000 people. And we get our seats. And as I remember, I don't know, some people don't know stage right, stage left as far as a performer. If you're on stage looking at the audience, that's your left and right. And so your stage left is an audience's right. And so we were off my right, but stage left. Not very good seats, kind of way up high and mostly towards the back. We didn't know what seats to get, and we probably weren't looking to spend a lot of money. And what I remember is the smell of marijuana,
right,
and tobacco, but mainly marijuana, being too frightened to use the men's room, even though it's such a non-dangerous situation. I'm some bony teenager. No one would have looked at me twice. It's a bunch of men with those Farrah Fawcett hairdos, like the brushed back, blow dried, is those days. A lot of corduroy pants and people drunk or high on pretty bad smelling arena weed. And I distinctly remember Aerosmith eventually came out on stage, and they were so small just because you're so far away. You're like, okay, well, I'm mainly watching a bunch of people watch Aerosmith. And if I'm remembering straight, I bet you could find it online, but I remember they opened with Rats in the Cellar, which would,
nice.
If you think about it, that would be a perfect opening song.
Yeah.
That big guitar riff coming in and just demands your attention.
But how is the sound?
Awful.
Oh.
Just because it's a venue that's huge, but it's not built for acoustics. It's built to hold an ice rink,
right,
or a basketball court. They're not thinking, have the stage, and no matter where you're sitting, it's going to sound good. So we're watching the band basically from the side. The sound is going kind of past us from our right to our left to the back, where it's hitting humans, empty seats, the ceiling, and basically smashing itself to pieces like a car going end over end and just fragmenting as it goes. That's what's happening to the sound. And it bounces back. So everything is boom, boom. You hear, hello, hello, and everything breaks apart. And your ears adjust somewhat, but mainly, and it's not a slam to the band, but it sounded awful. It's not their fault. It's the technology wasn't there. And it's not...
There's no big screens or anything like that yet.
But which was not a problem. It's just that you couldn't see much because the band is so small. And there's nothing really to hear because all you're hearing is like sonic backwash. And a few songs in, I distinctly remember kind of looking at Ian with this look of, are we having fun? I mean, is this... And I remember really having to will myself to like it. Like, I'm having a good time. This is awesome.
How is Ian reacting?
I think we were both kind of more quizzical than anything. Like, we're just checking it out. Like, this, it's big, and that is Aerosmith, and that's cool. But it would take you like 3 minutes to walk to them from your seat. I mean, it's a big place. And we had, not the greatest seats. And I just remember a few things from it. The smell of the weed. This fact that you could barely tell what the songs were, and we'd have these like mild arguments, like that's no, it's, are you sure? Because it was all just like wah 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 wah. And I remember Steve Tyler's mic stand with the bandanas, and that they all looked really skinny, like the band looked like really skinny, and that it was kind of a non-event. Like you went and just came out of it going, well, we did that. But you couldn't say, man, that was awesome. You're like, well, we were with thousands of other people watching them watch Aerosmith, and everyone around us seemed to be having a good time. And then we limped back into Washington. And the thing I'll never forget is going to sleep with the sound of a jet engine in my ears ringing, because I'd never been around dB level like that. Never. I mean, not remotely, especially for like 2 hours in a place that just is nothing but reflective surfaces. And I remember going to bed with this, basically probably the top range of my hearing being like singed off. but a roar that lasted into the morning. I got up the next day for school. I could still hear it, like the 747 taking off in my head. And I got on the school bus. And of course, my wonderful classmates, hey, idiot, what did you do? I mean, we were so awful to each other. I said, I saw Aerosmith. Like, how was it? Man, it was great. I had to like front it. Like, man, it was amazing. And we hung out with Tyler after the show. I remember, I distinctly remember propping the experience up to other people, saying, man, it was great. But knowing that I was lying. It wasn't great. And it's not that the band wasn't great. I'm not at all trying to put down Aerosmith. Not at all. It's just, it wasn't good seats, wasn't good sound, and it wasn't the right place to see anything with volume. And so it was a real anticlimactic experience where it made me distinctly uninterested in ever going back to see another show. It was more hassle than anything. Standing in line to get in, scary men with sleeveless denim vests. And so that was the first time. And but you have to remember, kind of how I am. I'm a fairly solitary type. I'm happy with the radio in my room or my little stereo, listening to records alone.
Oh no, something like that is an assault on your senses.
Yeah,
for sure.
And the most company I ever had with music was Ian. We'd either sit in my little basement and listen to rock and roll, or we'd go to his attic at his house and we'd listen to the same records, basically hard rock records. And that was kind of my listening experience, or alone in my room, or in a car, like in a carpool going to school or whatever. It was not thousands of people, so it was a little overwhelming at first. But that was the first time.
So who'd you go see the second time?
See, it got better.
Okay, so did you want to go?
Or
did Ian talk you into it?
Well, no. I hate to admit this, but it's true. There's some good parts and some bad parts. All true. We were Ted Nugent fans, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. The bad thing comes later. I'm so ashamed, but I have to tell you.
Okay.
But we love the Ted Nugent records. Ted Nugent, Free for All, Cat Scratch Fever, Double Live Gonzo. I mean, they're unimpeachably good, and people have strong opinions about the man, and that's fine. But the records, I don't know if you've ever spent any time with them. They are some of the best damn records I've ever heard in the rock genre. Anyway, we got tickets for the tour that was that he released Double Live Gonzo right after Free for All, and he toured on it. We got tickets for that. Same place, Capitol Center.
You didn't have any hesitations?
No, I wanted to see Nugent so bad.
Okay.
I was into those records, and I just wanted to see what it would be like. And we went, and like you, I've seen a lot of shows over many decades now, and that first time seeing Nugent, like of the 4 times I think I've seen him, is in my top 5. I mean, you could not mess with that band.
Was this the loincloth era?
No. This is, he comes out in jeans. I think he came out swinging from the rope. And the band was already going into just what the doctor ordered, which is just one of the best things. And he drops and hits the ground and starts playing the riff. And they just kick in. Or maybe, they're out there. He hits the riff when he hits the ground because he swings out with the guitar. And they just drop into the song.
So were you feeling excitement then?
It was raging. The sound was better. We had gotten better tickets. We're still kind of on the side, but not extreme high to the side. We're more in front of the PA than at Aerosmith. We're way closer. We just got a clue. Either Ian or I, probably Ian, he's the smarter one. He figured out, we'll buy these tickets instead. And these are like $11, $12 tickets. It's not that big a deal, but for a minimum wage, it's your Saturday. Anyway, they did Great White Buffalo, and Nugent had this incredible feedback. I mean, just this, he had that hollow body Gibson Birdland, and the band was crushing. Derek St. Holmes on vocals, Cliff Davies on drums. I don't know the rest of the lineup. We walked out of there completely doors blown off, like staggered out, like, damn, I want to go to that every night. And we became kind of maniacs for that. Like, we want that to happen in our lives. It was electrifying.
Did you have the seed yet that you wanted to be in a band, or that somehow you were?
No,
Not yet.
I felt like a real, just a consumer. And while it was better sonically and Nugent's aggression, I mean, he just came on with it, really healthy, very athletic guy, really intense.
A lot of testosterone.
A lot of, like, overwhelming. You know, like, you just walk out of there like. Anyway, it still felt to me like it's a product. I'm a consumer, because he said what all of those people say. Hey, Washington, you know, where you're being addressed like, hey, Washington. Like, well, no, I'm Henry. And I'm not saying, oh, you're being disingenuous, but it just had this feel of, I look down at the piece of paper and it says Delaware. I say, hey, hello, Delaware. I just kind of like, you know, hey, hello, Cleveland. And it just had a kind of I just stamp it out and say these things. In between songs, he did all the raps and everything. And you had this idea that, well, I guess it's the show. And he just gave us this show where you felt like you bought your ticket and you got your show and now go home. It wasn't personal, but what I'm trying to say is there was something lacking. As good as it was, there was like a piece missing where you're like, I'm loving it, but I'd love it completely if there's one more brick in place. Like, there's something that's missing and I can't figure it out, where it's 90% awesome, but it didn't make it life-changing besides the sheer volume and the attack of the band. I mean, it was so aggressive, like nothing we'd ever seen before. And we saw Nugent like every time he came through DC, and I think the first two times were just absolutely amazing. And then he lost his band and he got his new players in 79, and he put out that album, Weekend Warrior, and Van Halen opened. First album, they're like 19, 20. They're so hungry and they're so good. They weigh like 8 pounds, all of them together, like these skinny, raw guys. And they came out, and we had heard Running with the Devil on the radio. Ian and I were working at the pet shop, and we hear this song, and he goes, that's Van Halen. And he had heard about them from someone we knew from skateboarding. And I heard that song and went, wow, that's a really, really cool song, because the guitar was just different. And so we were getting a twofer. Like, all right, Van Halen's going to play. We like that song. And they came out and basically played the first album. And the opening band. And David Lee Roth is acting like he's the headliner. Like, hey, you know, it was great.
He's always known he was a star.
Totally. And Eddie Van Halen was like nothing you'd ever seen or heard. It was amazing. And he did Eruption, and I'll never forget it. He did Eruption, and everyone, there's like silence afterwards as everyone just kind of picked their jaws up off the floor, and then huge applause. And I'll never forget it. He put his hands in front of him and looked at them like they belonged to someone else. Like, I don't know how I just did that. It was smoking. And it was like 35 minutes. So it's like nothing but like 10 great songs. Thank you. Good night. And so people wander out into those massive hallways, and you see them coming back and putting on that Van Halen baseball jersey t-shirt with like the sleeves a different color.
The
white.
raglan.
Yeah. And they're all wearing that with a little tiny Van Halen. It was like they got the size wrong. They probably go for like $1,000 on eBay now. Anyway.
And so the crowd was soaking it up. I mean, they were loving it.
They loved it. And you knew that hardly any of them had the record. It just come out. But it was so convincing.
That's not easy for an opening band to do.
Exactly. But they were that good.
Right.
And the sound was that different. And Eddie Van Halen was that amazing. And David Lee Roth completely pulls it off. He's great because he's all over the place.
Yeah.
And he's incredible. So anyway, Nugent comes out with the new band. And I bought that record as soon as it came out. I was such, the Weekend Warrior records. I was so much a fan, and I didn't like it. And I didn't understand how Ted Nugent could make a record that I wouldn't like, but I kept playing it, trying to like it, didn't like it. And Nugent comes out on stage and starts doing those new songs. And it's not good. I mean, you really miss that rhythm section and that just killer band. And at one point, people start yelling, Van Halen. And here's the thing. They were yelling at the band and yelling for Van Halen at Ted Nugent. I was of the mind that we in the audience cannot be heard or seen by the person on stage, because you're being addressed like, hello, Washington, or hello, Largo, Maryland. We're nobody. And so if you yell at the stage, he can't hear you because you're just this little dot in a sea of dots. And so people yelled Van Halen for a few songs, and finally...
So is it turning into a chant?
No, just people going, Van Halen! And people were yelling things at Nugent. And believe it or not, he heard the audience. And he said a word that you never say. And then after it, he said, Van Halen. And 18,000 people started laughing. I mean, he lost his cool.
Well, you gave your power
away. He gave his power away, like served it up. And everyone was like, it's like that scene out of Life of Brian. I mean, everyone is on their back laughing because the giant's armor cracked. And Nugent, I'm not putting Nugent down. He psyched himself out, He should have just played and ignored it, but he bought in. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, he spent the rest of the show staring straight down at his wedge monitor. I didn't even know what that thing was. With one foot on the monitor, staring at it just so he could hear himself. And like, here's your show. And he dialed in. The rest didn't look up. Gave all the rest of the songs to the rhythm guitarist vocalist, who just kind of carried the show. Came out like 1 or 2 song encore, like boom, 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 here's your songs, good night. And just left. And we all went out and bought the Van Halen album the next day.
I wonder, did he keep them on tour with him after that?
I asked David Lee about that once. When I met him, I told him, because I met him in like 82 or 83, and I said, a few years ago, I saw you open for Ted Nugent. He said, Henry, that was November 15th, 1978, the Largo Center, Largo, Maryland. We sold $1,500.98 a t-shirt. So he had all these numbers. Wow. And I was like, okay, like that's insane. And I said, yeah, you guys kind of made Ted angry. And I think in conversation later, I think that turned into a thing on that tour, because Nugent had the talent, but he just didn't have the band, literally the band he used to have. And the Van Halen guys were just going strength to strength. They're right out of the club circuit. They're just so hungry. They'll chew your hand off. And that was a profound concert experience where I realized, we do exist, but only if we yell something that enrages the giant. And so the experience was still prophylactic in a way, where there's a separation between me and the music. I just didn't feel it was still spectacle. That's what I mean. It was still like you went to watch it and hear it, but not necessarily, I didn't feel it like I could when I was home alone in my room listening to the record, where it was like direct in. It was still like, well, we saw this thing. It might as well have been Evel Knievel jumping over 80 pickup trucks. It was just an event. The thing that punctuated that particular show was like that moment of comedy and how amazing Van Halen was. And so I think the next concert experience, if you have to ask Ian if I have this chronology wrong, it's Queen, News of the World Tour. I think We Are the Champions, or We Will Rock You. I think that's the single, with Thin Lizzy opening. Whoa. So Ian gets us tickets. And I went to a private school that had a ton of homework a night, like Epic.
Oh, come on.
And I said, I got to do my homework.
Henry.
And Ian said, I have in my hand 2 tickets to see Queen with Thin Lizzy opening, and you're going to do your homework? I said, yeah. And he went, okay. And that was like, 1970 something. To this day.
How bummed are you?
I can barely speak about it. And to this day, ask Ian, to this day, I'll say, what was that show like? And he'll just look at me and say, you should have gone. To this day, he will not let me off the hook. And he's right. I mean, that would be one of the biggest arena rock memories I would have been able to drag with me through these years.
Yeah.
And to this day, he will not tell me.
That's hilarious. Did you ever get to see Thin Lizzy?
No,
Oh,
never saw Phil Lynott. Walked by him on the street in London on a day off on a Black Flag tour.
Did you say hello?
I nodded at him and he nodded at me. And I think he didn't know me from anything. He just saw some skinny young guy not giving him the nod, and he gave me the nod. I was walking with Chris Haskett, and this is back in the Black Flag days. He was living in England, and I had a day off, and he was in London. We were just walking around, and we walked by the marquee where I think Black Flag had played the night before. And I remember looking at Chris saying, "Whoa, it's the Thin Lizzy guy." I didn't but the name Phil Lynott, I knew it, but it wasn't. But I said, "It's the Thin Lizzy guy," and he gave him the nod. He kind of nodded. And we went, huh, and just kept walking. But I semi-redeemed myself. And I think one of the last arena rock experiences I had, I apologize if I don't have the chronology exactly right, was I got Ian and I tickets for Led Zeppelin. And It was the tour right before Bonham sadly passed away. And it was the Into the Outdoor tour. So that'd be 78, 79. And a buddy of mine at school, his father was a big exec, and he had like kind of seats reserved for like the whole year at the Capitol Center in Largo, Maryland. And if it's a hockey game, he takes his fellow execs, how you pleasure the client.
Sure.
He had tickets for 5 Led Zeppelin shows. I think they did like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They did like 3 or 5 straight at the Capitol Center. And this guy had his dad said, "Here, take them." So he's selling them to his friends at school. I bought 2. And I remember taking that Ticketmaster envelope with a ticket in it and thumbtacking it to my little corkboard. And I'd look at it all the time to make sure it still said Led Zeppelin. And I forget how many weeks in advance that was, but the days dragged by like they just never passed. It's still 5 days. And it was like never going to happen. And so I'm forgetting how we got the ride out there, but we got there and we were off of stage right. If you're the performer, if you're looking out, we were at the band's 2:00 basically, and they're really good seats because this guy's dad was the cool exec, and it was seats we never could have gotten or afforded on our own. I mean, those seats go the first day, and we're waiting for Led Zeppelin, and they're 1 hour late. So a guy had to come out on stage and say, "Sorry, their plane is delayed. They're coming. And people started getting really mad, and they started playing Led Zeppelin through the PA, and to kind of keep everyone a little cooled out because they're looking at their watches, going, "What is this?" And I'll never forget it. The arena lights go dark, and there's a curtain, but we are seated so we can kind of see between the stage and the curtain, and we watch Robert Plant walk up to the microphone. I'm like, "Ian, look." And he shakes his hair out like, "Okay, ready." And then the curtain opens.
I just got chills.
Yeah, like we saw them like, a nanosecond before the show when they just was like walking onto the stage. And it's like this little crack of light that you had to be in that kind of sliver of light to see that angle. Because everyone up front has no idea what we were seeing like a second before the curtains came on. So it was kind of fun. And boom, all of a sudden it's Led Zeppelin. And it was...
What was the roar like of the audience?
Oh, it was huge. The whole night was just like, yeah. And, the 3-neck guitar, the bow, the whole thing. It was great. The acoustic set in the middle where they come out and sit on stools. They do like Going to California or whatever. It was... The only disappointment I had was I really wanted to hear Black Dog being done live. They didn't do Black Dog, but it was good. And I went online a few years ago. That show is online for free download. I think I have it somewhere in my hard drive because I remember them opening with Kashmir, and I was wrong about that. They opened the Kashmir's like in the second hour, but that was satisfying because it was Led Zeppelin. They did not disappoint. They play really hard. I mean, Robert Plant as a frontman, like the power of that vocal it's kind of frightening how hard he's hitting it. And it was great, yet, but still, it was just the number of people you're sharing that moment with where you felt connected yet disconnected at the same time. And I left like, wow, we saw Led Zeppelin. But again, it was more like we saw Evel Knievel jump across Snake River Canyon. Not that, wow, we were there with the music. And so I still preferred my records to going to see the show live because it was more the long drive, the line, and the hassle. And the music was the small reward. And then there's the line, the hassle to get out of an 18,000-seater, back into a vehicle, back into the city. I knew that I liked the live experience.
It lacked intimacy for you.
I guess, but I couldn't articulate it at the time. I just knew I wanted more from it. I think I just wanted more proximity. Like if you're going to be in a band, damn, I want to be like right in front of you. I want you to sing at me. I just want to be, not like no one else can be there but me. I just don't want to be like a city block from where it's happening, because in a way it kind of loses a little potency. To me, music, live music, it is a lot about proximity, about being close to the stage and like feeling the music. As you say, when you went to a show years ago, your pant legs are fluttering.
Oh my God.
Right?
Yes.
And
my legs got chapped.
I wanted that, but I didn't know that was possible. And so I didn't know what I was lacking. I just remember feeling like still hungry for something when I left.
Yeah.
There wasn't an emotional thing, I guess. It wasn't an emotional connection. There's just, you were a voyeur and a consumer. You were a customer, basically. No matter how cool the band was, I still felt like a customer. And I just thought there must be something more.
Right.
So
what was the first experience of getting more?
The first experience of getting more was, I think, February 15th, 1979. I was 18 years and 2 days old. I saw The Clash at the Ontario Theatre with Bo Diddley opening. And
God, that's a cool building.
that's a movie theater. I mean, you can walk right up and like slap Joe Strummer's foot. And there's no barricade.
I love that they had Bo Diddley open up.
Yeah, and he was living in Washington at the time. I found that out.
Wow.
Ian and I went and walked by his old house years ago. He was walking distance from the gig. Anyway, to see, they were on the second album tour, which was the first album. Give 'Em Enough Rope was the first one that came out in America, but it was their second album. And I was familiar with the first one because my buddy Roberto loaned it to me. And to watch them do like White Riot and Janie Jones and all of that stuff, Garageland and all of that, it was monumental. We walked out of there kind of silenced because our minds were all blown and we wanted like kind of our privacy to kind of revelate in what happened. We had no cars. We had to walk through the snow back home, like cross town, me and Ian and Bert and all these people from the neighborhood were like in a line cutting through woods to get home with our little punk rock outfits on. Just silent. Like, wow, everything's different now. And it changed for me what rock and roll was, what it could be, what going to shows could be. And that was it. I was like, I would go do anything to see a show after that. And I started going to see like the Cramps and 999, the Buzzcocks, anything that came through that looked interesting.
And you kept getting that feeling in the smaller punk rock?
Over and over again. And then Ian's in a band and I'm going to see him in front of like 50 people, or there's a house party and the Bad Brains are playing and you're literally getting sweated on by HR. Like you're standing in front of it and, carrying the band's gear out, helping them out to put into some junker car after the show, where it became part of my life and not something I was merely spectating.
No, you were with it. You were in it.
In it.
Yeah.
And the music became so personal, where those nights became chapters of your life, like tattooed into you, where you realized you were lucky, you were in the right place, doing the right thing, and nothing was ever going to be different. Or sorry, nothing was ever going to be the same again. And it took me a long time to get back to all those really good records I had, because suddenly Led Zeppelin can't cut it, and Steve Miller and Aerosmith and all these really good bands that I had the records on. I'm like, no, it has to be punk rock. And years later, I came back to all that music because it is good. I just had to allow myself the space to go, well, I can enjoy more than one. For me, it was when I heard the punk rock, it was everything changed. And I had to listen to nothing but punk rock to stay true to that amazing Big Bang experience. And so that was the change. I sometimes wonder if there's people who go see your big rock acts, if they ever think to go to a small venue, if their only experience is a Lollapalooza-sized mass gathering or a Madison Square Garden Staples Center, like, Hello New York experience, if they ever have been in front of a band with like 300 people. Because to this day, the bands I like, that's kind of where they play, or in the smaller venues. I don't really follow much that becomes that big. It's just not the kind of music I follow. No.
But it is interesting because when you're right with the band, it's so much better.
Right. I mean, you've been to a million shows. There's nothing like it. And I just saw Iggy open for Metallica, me and 65,000 people. And I was behind the soundboard with Max, their front of house guy. And we're in a tent, like right in front of the band at like the 50-yard line. But in front of you is more people than it's half of the city. Experience. Yeah, and Iggy's like, in the band, they're like an inch tall. And you see them on video screens.
Yeah.
And you find yourself watching the band on the screen because there's nothing to see on stage. And so I thought to myself the other night when I was watching, I'm watching a TV show about a band in real time. And it was like, well, it's cool, but man, it's not the thing. It's a thing. So, yeah.
Well, but I think even, all those early arena rock shows, all those things were planting seeds in the Rawlings for his future.
And, while it wasn't as amazing as like standing in front of the Cramps and having Lux Interior like climb on you,
sure,
or watching Dee Dee Ramone sweat like in front of you, it's looking back, I'm so glad I went. I should have gone more. Obviously, should have seen Queen and Thin Lizzy. And I just feel really lucky for seeing those bands before there was the term classic rock,
right,
before any of that. And like seeing Led Zeppelin, obviously, I lucked out. I mean, that's kind of the...
Yes, you did.
The one thing I can always say, like, at least I saw Led Zeppelin. That's pretty damn cool. And luckily, they did not disappoint. I mean, they really did not disappoint. It was incredible. So, Heidi, is it time?
Jackhammer.
What? Oh, what the? Ladies and
gentlemen, I never
get
sick of it.
We're back in the harness. We had the soundbite lined up. This wonderful sound can only mean one thing. It's time yet again for Heidi's Headline. All right, Heidi, what do you got?
Well, this headline was written this morning.
Henry comes up with a new nickname for Heidi, but it's not a word. Turns it over. It's a hand gesture.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. That, oh boy, we better explain quickly. And so Heidi she's not a simplistic person. She's actually very complex. But she has a lot of simple fixes for what I consider to be sometimes complex problems. Like I'll say something, she'll go, oh, what's the matter? Are we sad boy today? And I'll, lay out this multi-level explanation of some kind of thing that I'm going through. And she'll say, then just do that. And it's done. And you're on to the next thing. And there's so many situations where she'll say, well, all you need to do is you go and you take that vitamin. Fixed it for you. It's like, no, I don't think so. She goes, I think so. And she just kind of gleefully moves on to the next thing. And in a certain way, Heidi, you live your life like that. And certainly not all things are obviously not that easily remedied. but where I will tie a long neurotic string onto some kites. You're like, eh. And so anyway, many years ago, you want me to tell this story? Many years ago, I had snakes, and I had some reticulated pythons. And they get really big, really fast. Ask any of your friends who have one. They grow like a weed. They grow in front of you. It's kind of amazing. Anyway, the food items some of these animals would take down would be, sizable. And I had one python, wild caught, very mean, and hated me. And it would not eat pre-killed rats, because I would always introduce killed food to these animals so they don't get bitten or attacked by the food item, and the rat won't have a traumatic time dying. They either arrive frozen or you get them live and you bunk them over the head and it's over.
That's just terrible.
Well, that's just how it is. Anyway, you make it as quick as possible and as painless as possible. But when the snake is squeezing the animal, it's screaming and, it's just, it's not groovy. Anyway, there's one snake I had, it would only take live rats, and it just wouldn't eat a dead one. And I would, even if I would poke it with the rat, it wouldn't grab it and haha, I'm squeezing you. It would go nope, that's dead. I don't want it. So I'm like, okay, this thing has to eat. And it's just, it should never have been, brought back from the wild, but it was just used to live prey. And you have to be careful with rats introducing it to a snake, because sometimes the rat will get the advantage, and the snake will grab, and this happens with rats and mice and a boa, any constricting animal, where the snake doesn't get the food item as well as it should, and it can reach over and start chewing on the snake. And sometimes it's just on the snake's body, and you'll see snakes in the wild with scar tissue on their sides because they've been attacked by the thing that they're attacking.
Well.
However, sometimes and that's why you have to watch the snake consume it, because if you leave the snake in the cage with the animal, sometimes if it doesn't immediately attack the food item and kill it, the rodent will attack the snake. And you will have some expensive python or some rare snake with the rodent happily eating the snake's head.
Cool.
And so I was telling Heidi about this. This is 10 years ago. And she said, well, here's what you do. If the rat kills your python, then the rat becomes your pet.
That's right.
And that was it.
And that's right.
And I said, it's a $2 rat.
I don't care.
An $1,100 snake.
I don't care.
The rat is your pet. And so that's Heidi May. And she gets through life very quickly because, what some of us see as a mountain, old Heidi May, and we're on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so there it is.
Oh yeah, that rat. I was pro the rat.
I
was so pro the rat.
And Heidi, I wish I could be with so many issues in my life, but I'm just not good at it.
Well, I never realized that about myself, but it is true.
Yeah, and that just occurred to me this morning. And I did that a bunch of times in the restaurant, and it was loud in there. And I saw a couple of people turn around, is he hitting something? And they're looking at me, looking at you, going, and they're like, okay. So that happened.
So I'm a gesture now. Or a hand gesture.
There you go. I think that's the first time I've seen you do that today. There you go, Heidi. So
anyway, that was Heidi's headline.
There you go. And so is it time to wrap up?
And I'm telling you, there's people out there that agree with me. If the rat won, that should be your new pet. Survival of the fittest.
Hey, look, they're so happy they're applauding already. Yay, yay. See? And the podcast is coming to an end.
See you next time.
Right. Thank you so much for listening. And yes, Heidi, one last one will end up. And that's how we end the podcast. We thank you. We still have 15 seconds left of the applause track. Let's just ride it out. 8, 7,